In 1511, Raphael painted this image of Pope Julius II. Beautiful and striking as it is, it perhaps doesn't quite give us the character of this remarkable pope, referred to often as the warrior pope, a pope who went into battle in armor and who was often criticized for his worldliness, yet nevertheless played a crucial role in establishing the authority of the papacy in Italy in the early 16th century. Julius was part of a line of popes who played a crucial role in bringing or restoring the papacy to something of its former glory, the papacy of the Renaissance. We know that at the Council of Constance, that the great schism was brought to an end, that the three rival popes were pushed aside for the election of Martin V. But yet it would be some time before the popes would return to Rome, a notoriously rebellious city that did not particularly relish the prospect of a pope reasserting his authority over them. The papacy at the beginning of the 15th century, therefore, was in a relatively weak position. Its authority, greatly diminished by the Great Schism, was limited to a small patch of territory. What we see during the 15th century was the papacy embracing the Renaissance in its various forms. This led to the reconstruction of Rome. Rome itself had become a city of ruins. Rome, under the popes, would be rebuilt. Their authority would be established as temporal rulers over the papal lands. And they would build alliances with the great monarchs of Europe. In addition, they would engage in practices that would bring the criticism of people such as Jan Hus and his followers. And that involved nepotism, the granting of offices to one's family members, and simony, the sale of offices. The latter being a crucial way, for instance, if you wanted to create a cardinal, a crucial way of raising money. In addition, as the popes extended their territorial authority in the papal lands, they became involved in such seemingly non-ecclesiastical practices as mining to raise revenue. All of this fed into the glory of Rome and the Pope as the center figure of the church. This involved the building of palaces, the arrival of cardinals to the city, and the construction of palazzi where they would live. Nicholas V hoped to restore the church by tearing down the old St. Peter's and building a new church. It was something that would not be realized until the time of Julius II, the beginning of the 16th century, the building of St. Peter's, the sale of indulgences for which would play an important role in the beginning of the Reformation. But during the 15th century, the papacy belonged to extraordinary characters, such as Nicholas V, Pius II, the great humanist, and others who came from leading families, but all shared a desire to build the papacy and the glory of Rome by making it a center of learning, the construction of libraries. Rome, during the 15th century, became one of the most important centers of learning, where the greatest scholars gathered. All of this was enhanced by making Rome a center of pilgrimage, the widening of streets for pilgrims, so that thousands upon thousands would flood into the city for the great Jubilee of 1450. Rome became a place that was the center of the church, yet its authority only really extended to a relatively small part of Italy. The popes relied upon the secular rulers of Europe and the Holy Roman Emperor to provide them with wider influence. And they did this by making exchanges whereby certain papal prerogatives for the gathering of revenue were traded in return for political support. This is how the popes of the 15th century defeated the conciliarist movement, that movement that sought to establish a council as the chief authority within the church. The conciliarists had opposed the papacy, but in the end the papacy prevailed, and largely because it was able to bring together the monarchs of Europe. And it did this by exchanging its powers for support. So that by the end of the 15th century, Rome had moved from being a malaria-ridden backwater to the center of the intellectual and cultural life of Western Christianity. It was, of course, under Julius II that we have the Sistine Chapel of Michelangelo, Raphael, and a whole host of other great figures associated with the restoration of Rome. The criticism of Martin Luther of the papacy in the early years of the Reformation, his position that it was Antichrist, reflected an institution that was not weak, but one that had flourished over the course of the 15th century, so that by the early decades of the 16th century, it had become a center of Christianity, of culture, and learning.